Today's World Insight. A consensus to slash mutual tariffs and to keep talks going in a joint statement from China and the U.S. after discussions in Geneva. What does this mean for the world's top two economies? What's the trade outlook?
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. China and the United States have issued a joint statement following their high-level talks on economic and trade affairs in Geneva. The two sides did agree to come up with a mechanism to pursue more discussions on related issues in economy and trade. Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng says substantial progress was made during the two-day talks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Let's take a look.
The two sides agreed on establishing a consultation mechanism for trade and economic issues, identify the lead persons on each side, and will carry on further consultations related to trade and economic issues of their respective concerns.
The consensus from both delegations this weekend is neither side wants a decoupling. And what had occurred with these very high tariffs, as Ambassador Greer said, was the equivalent of an embargo, and neither side wants that. We do want trade. We want more balanced trade, and I think that both sides are committed to achieving that.
Now let's loop in our panelists. In Singapore, Jim Rogers, chairman at Rogers Holding. In Beijing, Zhao Hai, director of the International Political Studies at the Institute of Global Strategy here in China. In Tokyo, Tu Xinchuan, a leading expert on trade and dean of China Institute for WTO Studies with the University of International Business and Economics. Last but not least, here in our Beijing studio, Einar Tangen, senior fellow at the Taihe Institute and chairman of the Asian Narratives. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. A lot to dive in. I want to have an immediate response from all of you. One or two sentences, if you can, about the latest results. Some say it's quite a pleasant surprise. Others say this is just the beginning. Mr. Rogers.
Hooray. How about one word? Hooray.
Correct. Okay. Mr. Zhao.
Well, for now, it's a win-win situation on both sides. But for the future, the uncertainty still remains.
Uncertainty remains. And Mr. Tu, Professor.
Yeah, I think the results are much beyond my best expectations. So congratulations.
All right. And Mr. Tangen.
Two periods to watch for the next 24 hours to see exactly how Trump reacts to it after he's seen the polls, he's seen what the television has to say, and seen the markets.
Well, having said that, though, let's go into some of the details. As we said earlier, some say it's quite a pleasant surprise. Others say what is really important is its impact and the details of the agreement. Now, Professor Tu, to you, you are an expert on WTO and global trade for decades. This immediate scrap of walking back on some of the earlier reciprocal tariffs and suspending of certain percent of tariffs on both sides, what does that mean for everybody?
Well, actually, after the April 2nd reciprocal tariffs of the United States, the two sides actually escalated the tariff war significantly. So the final rates of tariffs are actually prohibited tariffs. So basically, there will be no trade between the two countries. Now, after the negotiation in Geneva, now the two sides have backed off. So basically, the additional tariff will be like 10% for each side. So this is at least doable for companies. So then this will resume bilateral trade. So I think the result is good for both sides and for companies from the two countries. So then the U.S. can import from China, China can import from the U.S. So at least we can resume the bilateral trade.
For now.
Otherwise, I mean,
at least
yeah,
before 90 days. Yeah. Let's take a look at some of the parts of this joint statement regarding the provisions on cutting more current tariffs. The two countries will both suspend for 90 days the 24% tariffs on imports from each other, and they will retain the 10% baseline tariff. Additional mutual tariffs made after April the 8th are also going to be removed from both sides. The non-tariff countermeasures that China has taken against the United States will be suspended as well. To you, Mr. Rogers, you are an investor for decades. And how are you observing this current wave?
Well, of course, I see the market going straight up.
Yeah, sure.
The market likes it. The market likes it a lot. Mr. Trump watches the stock market very closely. He sees that the market likes it a lot. So he's going to be very happy, and he will try to make more. He knows this is good for both economies, and it's good for the world.
Not only on the walking back of reciprocal tariffs and suspending of 20% on both sides for 90 days, but also, Professor Zhao, the mechanism, according to both sides' announcement, had been established on consultations on trade and economic issues, can be in each other's country, can be in a third country, can be teleconference, can be video, you name it, at appropriate times. It can be at a specific time or at times that both sides feel necessary. So what does this mechanism, once established, could mean for both sides and beyond?
Well, first of all, I want to emphasize this is a man-made disaster, and the point that we return to the starting point is not something that we achieved greatly, but to return to rationality, to a very plausible sort of policy toward each other. And in terms of mechanism, also this should be a two great countries have between each other, a normal contact between two sides, and whenever they need to pick up the call and call each other, maintain the stability of the market, of the global market, and maintain communication between the two sides. That should be the normal. And now what we're seeing since the Trump administration started is an abnormal stage. And now I'm happy that now they return to rationality and coming back to a normal communication mechanism established between the two sides. Hopefully they will maintain communications and make this mechanism useful so that in the future this won't happen again.
Well, the current administration in the U.S. is certainly well known for transactional and changing mind from time to time. Now, Mr. Tangen, you still talk about the uncertainty. What do you think this mechanism, at least, being established, what could that mean?
Well, we don't know exactly how it's going to work. It's definitely trade consultations. I agree with Zhao Hai. This is better and the way it should be conducted, but it does not address the campaign promises that Donald Trump made to his base that he was going to make other countries pay. He didn't say 10%. He said it was going to be a lot more.
All right. But take a look at what is being decided. Mr. Tu, Professor, what do you think this mechanism means? We see mechanism like this through earlier administrations, whether it's a Republican or Democrat, between China and the United States. Now we are seeing that mechanism, even though not necessarily called the earlier names, but we hope it could serve earlier roles.
Yeah, of course, this kind of communication mechanism is useful and helpful. But I think the willingness is even more important. So the current situation was created actually by the zero-sum ideology on the U.S. side. Especially President Trump believed that trade, especially trade deficit, means U.S. loss and China wins. That's actually not a correct understanding about international trade. So. Of course, as I said, if we have this kind of communication channel and mechanism, then we have more chances to discuss with each other. We have more opportunity to understand what the other side thinks about the issues. But finally, we still need a kind of ideological change on the U.S. side.
Mr. Rogers, we heard from the U.S. side talking about greater respect and also a mutual shared interest between the two sides during the negotiations being recognized. Now, to you, of course, these are huge diplomatic words, but behind, what is the logic for a change of mind, at least for now, by Washington right now?
Well, Mr. Trump watches the market, the stock market, and he watches the economy closely. He sees that the American economy has been getting weak since he became president. He seems that the stock market has been getting weak. So he knows that somebody doesn't like what has been happening, and he wants to be popular. And his person, Scott Bessent, his Treasury Secretary, he knows the same things. Scott Bessent has always been in favor of free trade. So I think they both got the message.
Now, Professor Tu, Chinese side described it in the press conference after the talks as candid, in-depth, constructive. Now, once again, these are diplomatic words. To you, what do these words ring the bells to you? What kind of bells?
I think, in my opinion, the most important thing for this negotiation is balanced and mutually respectful. So you can see after the negotiation, the results show that both sides make some concessions or retreat on their measures. Of course, the tariff war was initiated by the United States. But now, after the negotiation and talks, the U.S. backed off and reduced its reciprocal tariffs. And also on the China side, we also call back our retaliatory measures. So then both sides feel satisfactory with the results. So I think the result is balanced. The negotiation is, as you said, is candid, but more important, I think it's mutually respectful to each other.
Mr. Tang?
It is mutually respectful, but that is a big change in tone from the the administration. But there's something else that has been mentioned here.
That's being described by Chinese side, by the way,
yes,
these three adjectives.
I know, but the issue here is that there's another part to this, and that is debt. Right now, debt was climbing. He was looking at a sharp increase over the debt, almost $18 trillion that would have to be refinanced over the next couple of years. If that debt number starts to go up because interest rates go up, it could eat away literally all of his budget.
Now, Mr. Zhao, you're a political scientist, so let me ask you from a perspective, maybe you can help us to understand. We know political decisions in normal times are being made among many factors, numbers, public opinion, strategic goals, geopolitics, and you name it, party politics, of course. So among all these factors, what do you think has led to the latest result? The Chinese side once again described it as candid, in-depth, and constructive.
Well, it's candid, in-depth, it's constructive and also productive. One thing is very clear. Constructive means that at the end of this conference, finally, China-U.S. have a joint statement, which hasn't seen for a very long time. So that's very important. And also, both sides are talking with good, positive attitude. That is also missing for quite some time because in many occasions, both sides accusing each other of their shortcomings and then not recognizing the contribution of each side. So I think the overall attitude in atmosphere of this conference is relatively good. And also it's quite productive because after the meeting, both sides decreased their tariffs dramatically and also started talking on many other issues, including fentanyl and other factors. So overall, I think this meeting is much more than what we expected. So from a very cold, icy relationship, from now, even Trump sending out Twitters praising this meeting is quite significant. However, I think there are many factors that are pushing both sides getting closer to each other fast, because it's a responsible thing to do. This is not or no longer a bilateral issue. This is a global issue, because without trade between the two sides, global supply chain will be significantly disrupted, just like during the pandemic month. So this is very harmful. And also, I think the previous speakers also mentioned Trump's watching the stock market, talking to billionaires, and also, watching job reports. So in many reports, even though the previous numbers seems to be good, but the the leading indicators are weakening quite significantly, particularly the consumer confidence numbers, and also Trump's polling numbers. So these are, quite dangerous waters that Trump wouldn't want to put himself in.
Mr. Rogers, the latest result, at least for now, how much does it say to the lack of logic of earlier arguments from Washington about trade as a political issue, and the logic of trade is a zero-sum game?
Well, Conway, first of all, don't use the word logic with Washington, D.C., and don't use the word Washington with
Thank you for your advice.
And don't use the word logic with Donald Trump. I mean, they don't understand each other. And what Mr. Trump cares about is the stock market and votes. And he knows that the stock market is the fastest and his easiest reference to what's going on. He watches it every day. Don't worry, he watches it, I assure you. And if the market's going up, Mr. Trump is going to be happy with somebody. And so that's your most important indicator.
Earlier, we showed some footages of the harbors, but actually the latest media report suggests that some of the harbors on the west coast of the United States actually has been empty because of no ship coming from China over the past few days. That really shows how severe the situation is before this consensus was being reached between China and the United States. But Professor Tu, it does say very clearly, in a trade war or a tariff war, neither side is the winner. That's why the two sides could quickly reach something like this consensus that surprised everybody.
Of course, especially the previous such high tariffs will just eliminate the bilateral trade. But actually, right now, the two sides, the U.S. and China, depend on each other still very significantly. Of course, the U.S. depends on imports from China for consumers and also for factories. And also, China needs the U.S. market to sell our products. The two sides still have very high dependence on each other. So we all believe that the tariffs over 100% are unsustainable for both sides. So right now, of course, as you have said, those harbors on the U.S. side are empty, which means that there will be a huge supply shock for the U.S. market. A lot of consumers couldn't buy their stuff from U.S. stores. So this is, again, as I said, unsustainable and not beneficial for the U.S. economy and the U.S. consumers.
Not to mention some of the largest employers of blue-collar workers are small and medium-sized American companies, and they are all so much related, almost all of them are so much related to the supply chains and value chains related to Chinese counterparts, isn't it, Mr. Tengen?
Yes, they are, and you heard a lot of stories that were being told by people who actually still supported Donald Trump, but they said they were in danger of losing their business. This is something very important, but this is the real pressure. This idea that somehow Washington, and I agree with Jim Rogers on this, became reasonable is nonsense. They're feeling the pressure from within the United States, empty shelves, people rising prices, people going unemployed. These were the things that were really making the Trump administration decide that they had to deal.
Well, this, of course, as all of you suggested, is beyond the two countries, as being demonstrated by the reactions coming from the rest of the world. Right after the trade talks between China and the United States, the Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng, who was in Geneva then, met with the World Trade Organization's Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. On Sunday, Ms. Iweala said she is pleased with the positive outcome of the talks between China and U.S. in Geneva. These discussions mark a significant step forward, and they bode well for the future. Amid current global tensions, this progress is important not only for the U.S. and China, but also for the rest of the world, including the most vulnerable economies. Now, of course, this is an important aspect of trade, which is it impacts everybody. But Mr. Zhao, tell me more about what do you think if this kind of consensus reached between China and the United States being implemented, what could that mean for the trade negotiations that Washington hopes to have with others? And what would that mean also for some of the latest discussions about trade policies worldwide?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, other countries will see through Trump administration, what their intentions and what Trump's personal intentions on this issue. And that means many countries will start toughen up their positions and learn from China's case and try to figure out how to negotiate with the United States from a position of strength. And the other thing is that it's quite clear that Trump still tried to maintain a certain level of tariff, particularly the 10% universal tariff, which means that Trump still stick to this MAGA doctrine that raising tariff would be beneficial to U.S. Federal revenue, also to have protectionist measures continue to be there, meaning that they can reshoring manufacturing from other countries back to the United States. So they still have those beliefs. And thirdly, I think there are easy cases for Trump administration to reach trade deals. Particularly now we see Great Britain first reach deal with the United States. But the more the U.S. negotiate with other countries, particularly the countries the U.S. is running a deficit with, the more difficult it gets. So I think it's very important that after China, many other countries would try to come together and pressure the United States to drop that unfair so-called reciprocal tariffs as soon as possible, because it's harmful for everybody.
Of course, the current administration in Washington hopes to have a domino effect as a result of the current consensus being reached between either U.S. and the UK or U.S. and China. But Mr. Rogers, to you, how much impact will have on the other negotiators that are currently thinking about negotiating with Washington?
Well, Washington is the largest economy in the world. Everybody knows that, not just you and I. So everybody is watching it closely. Washington is doing its best to explain its position to the rest of the world, because Trump knows that if he does something foolish, the American stock market will collapse, he will lose huge numbers of votes, and Mr. Trump wants to be popular. Mr. Trump wants to be successful. He is more interested in trade and votes than anything else.
Right. Of course, this can be a better time than before the consensus was reached. But exactly how much relaxed and quote-unquote celebratory people should be, that is really a big question mark, because there's also the issue of implementation. But anyway, in my earlier interview with the WTO Director General Ngozi Iweala, she called for calm and restraint in trade talks with all countries. Take a look.
We've seen protectionism on the rise, various measures being used by different countries. We need to be very careful that trade policy uncertainty and fragmentation does not impact the world in an adverse way. Let us not rush to take action and counter-action. Let's keep the steady. Let's keep everyone deliberate. Let's chill.
Well, that was an earlier interview. How much the world has changed since then as well. Having said that, though, implementation of the consensus is of the utmost importance. Now, how much do you trust both sides that those on the paper today will be actions tomorrow? or after the 15th? Let's go to you, Mr. Tangen.
Well, quite clearly China will follow through. They have been trying very hard to get these talks going. They were the ones who selected Geneva, which was symbolic because that's where the WTO is. They want to strengthen it. You saw that they briefed them. That hitting the news is a clear signal to the United States that they want to rejoin, they want the U.S. to rejoin the international order in the interest of everybody, including the United States.
Mr. Rogers?
Anyway, all of this is symbolic, but everybody knows that trade wars will ruin America. Washington knows that, and they don't want to lose votes. So watch the American stock market. I know you're in China, but I'm just telling you, if you want to know what Mr. Trump is watching, every morning he watches the stock market, every night. So if you watch the stock market, you will know exactly what he's watching.
Yeah. Well, I understand the psyche much better as a result of, as some say. Professor Tu, what about that?
I think the biggest job of implementation is to negotiate further, because the current tariff level is still very, very high. And especially the U.S. Is imposing fentanyl tariffs, 20% on all Chinese products. This is still a big issue. So I hope that the two sides could find a solution on this issue and cancel the 20% tariffs on Chinese products. And also, actually, I don't think that President Trump will just give up his idea on tariffs. He still believes that tariffs could bring manufacturing back to the U.S. So I think countries or these trading partners of the U.S., including China, should still fight against U.S. protectionism, trying to bring the U.S. back to the multilateral trade system.
And just to follow up, what do you think about the interactions between Vice Premier He Lifeng from China and the WTO head in terms of talking about the China-U.S. consensus and also talking about WTO reform?
Of course, this actually the selection of the venue of the negotiation is also interesting. It is in Geneva, which the WTO headquarters is. So I think China is trying to show that China is in support of the multilateral trading system, because the U.S. is violating WTO rules. So I think this interaction between Vice Premier He and DG Ngozi is very indicative that China is supporting the WTO.
Mr. Zhao, very briefly, 30 seconds.
Well, I think at this point, China should have this attitude of trust but verify, or even further, trust but hedge, meaning that China should continue to expand its domestic consumption and also expand its connection with other countries in terms of trade, and particularly in the global south. And in terms of bilateral agreement, I think there's still possibilities that Trump may change his mind. We need to guard against that.
All right. And Mr. Tangen?
10
seconds.
Expect a phase two as an incentive for U.S. to go follow through.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the latest development. We are looking forward to see how the results will be delivered. Appreciate it. And that's all the time we have for today's live show. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of my team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.